Hello everyone, welcome back to the final part for today, Friday, January 25th, 2013. I'm going to continue here with Asia. You have the Japan-China crisis is the most significant geopolitical tension in the world. This is World Economic Forum, Switzerland. China and Japan appear to be on the verge of a shooting war over some tiny islands that are on the subject of a territorial dispute, which is probably just the cover story. It says that tensions between these countries are escalating, and it's a matter of immense national concern for the U.S. and the rest of the world. Yesterday in Davos, sat down with Ian BREMMER, the president of Geopolitical consulting firm of the Eurasia Group, to get his take on the situation. So this is the key, right? He says the big problem is the relationship, the balance of power between those two countries has changed dramatically and really very strongly not in Japan's favor, i.e. not in the West or U.S.'s favor, Rothschild's family and them. So yeah, I mean, they have that country held at gunpoint, and they have to do what they're told. And right now, they're carrying out sanctions and stuff like that. The Japanese government, and it's ruining their own economy in the process. Their biggest exports to China. Inside China, war hysteria blamed on the United States. So it says war hysteria in China has not been this screechy since the 70s. The newly appointed Supreme Leader President of China has revamped the command structure of the PLA and given the world's largest military force a central mission to get ready for war, and quickly. So much of China's call to arms is related to the increasingly unyielding stance on its territorial disputes with its neighbors, and China has disputes with almost all of them. It says here some of the more tense discourse with China's maritime neighbors, including Japan, the Philippines, South Korea, Taiwan, and Vietnam. So we were just talking about North Korea, and they said they were getting these missiles and that long-range missiles, intercontinental missiles, prepared, and they're doing tests, basically aimed at their arch enemy. They use the same word, which was the United States. Under the direct control by the United States, right-wing forces in Japan are using the dispute to challenge China's sovereignty, and other countries such as the Philippines and the South China Sea region are provoking us and acting ridiculously, the newspaper said last week. In an unusually harsh commentary stated, the official communist paper, the Global Times, accused Washington of insidious strategic plots to make trouble for the Chinese-Japanese relations and the conflict over these islands, which Japan also claims and calls the Senkaku Islands. Finishing up with this article, it says, we must be clear that the U.S. never wants China to be strong. The U.S. is changing China from a peaceful competitor to a Soviet Union-like Cold War-era enemy. He warned that China must be prepared for war, speed up economic and military preparations required of a military struggle, and speed up our nuclear second strike capabilities. Next up, we have China and Russia, U.S. raise Mediterranean naval focus. Goes on here, and it says that Egypt has seen no shortage of empires come and go, from its own ancient civilization to those of Greece, Rome, Britain, and France, and now it is among the outposts of the latest Mediterranean power, China. So it goes on here, and it says that, like several other key ports in the region, including the Piraeus in Greece and Naples in Italy, it is now partially owned by China. For the last 2 years, the PLA has sent one or more warships to the Suez Canal to visit southern European ports, the furthest its fleet has ever operated from home. The Chinese are showing their flag in an area far from the traditional area of operations, in part to show that they are a global power. And I think they have ones off India, near India as well. China is building a new deep-sea mining base conveniently near the military's naval fleet. China announced today a multi-million-dollar deep-sea base built off its eastern coast in the year 2013. The project worth an estimated 495 million won, about 80 million, that's crazy, is said to be for the purpose of mining for rare metals and natural gas deposits in the ocean bed. So basically, this vice president for the security and political affairs at the National Bureau of Asia Research says that this base has military implications written all over it. Then DARPA eyes pop up deep-sea sensors. I've been holding on to these articles for a while, so that's why I'm getting through them today. In a proposal almost as fanciful as the fictional 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne, the Defense Advanced Research Agency kicked off a research project last Friday to develop sensor systems that could be placed miles below the surface of the ocean and activated when needed by a remote command. It said it wants to develop a system that can store unmanned sensors such as waterborne or airborne cameras, decoys, network nodes, beacons, and jammers, and watertight capsules that can withstand pressure at depths of up to 3.7 miles deep and then be launched to the surface after years of dormancy. Almost like they're expecting a nuclear fallout or something like that, or some kind of economic, whatever, climate catastrophe. Japan mulling military equipment near disputed islands from the 16th. They may station military equipment on islands near the archipelago of the center of dispute with China. So, after a bunch of near confrontations, which they have had, even with the Taiwan boat basically spraying them with a hose, and Japan came out saying that they have documents back from the 1600s, 1700s that the islands are theirs. So Taiwan gears up for military drills to counter any mainland threat. Forces plan 62 exercises this year to ensure that they are ready to meet any threat from the mainland. Here in this picture, you have Taiwanese soldiers fire a self-propelled howitzer cannon during an annual defensive drill last year. Then next up, we have Russia and NATO to hold joint exercises in 2013. And talking about training, military conducts training exercises in Miami. Wouldn't be the first one. They always have exercises. So, like in Chicago, Black Hawk choppers soared in the skies in downtown Miami Wednesday night. The joint military training exercise also involved local police. Police have blocked off traffic on one of the boulevards. They're being executed to meet requirements, which include upcoming overseas missions and ensure their equipment is in good working order. So, when they go overseas, too, they're getting extra training for when they come back to the United States. Amateur footage shot by Atlanta resident captured the sound of blank rounds being fired. Says he was in town for work when he was filming the footage. He said he heard the machine gun fire and then hit the deck. He said, "I didn't know what to expect, and it was one of those loudest things I ever heard." And of course, they don't tell residents so that they can create the most realistic simulation, which is to scare the hell out of the locals by not telling them. Additional exercises have been taking place across the Miami-Dade County. Political law enforcement officers have been vague about specific locations and how long the drills will continue, but they say public safety is their top priority, which is why the exercises are being held at night. And here's some of the biggest news in the last week, basically, but it's not news because in the Marine Corps, actually, for the officers, female officers have been allowed to serve in combat roles, whatever. So, U.S. military to lift ban on women in combat is a historic step for equality. So there's equality for you women. You get to go and fight for the empire, right? Fight for that oil. The U.S. military will soon announce the end, and it sucks that it has to be like that, The U.S. military will soon announce the end of a 19-year ban on women in combat, according to a senior defense official. A sweeping change that appears to recognize the reality that female troops have experienced since the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan. Like the elimination of the don't ask, don't tell policy prohibiting gay men and women from serving openly, the decision represents another far-reaching reversal of military policy and is emblematic of the changing morals and culture in the American armed forces. Army has dropped fitness standards to allow more women to join. The fitness standards for British Army recruits, including men, have been reduced so that more women can join and equality targets can be met, it has been claimed. So who makes these equality targets, It's the internationalists, the globalists. So, it says here that Major Webb, the first woman to lead an all-male field force, and the Army warned that standards would deteriorate further if the UK followed America in allowing women soldiers to fight in the front line. She said women should not be given roles in infantry units where they would be expected to close with and kill the enemy at close quarters. She told BBC that we don't want to reduce standards of fitness for male soldiers, for infantry soldiers, in order to meet what women can do, and this is, I'm afraid, what is likely to happen is already happening. Then you have Air Force calls number of sex assaults appalling. The Air Force recorded an appalling number of reports of sexual assault last year, even as it worked to curb misconduct in the wake of sex scandal at its training headquarters in Texas. And I'm going to go on a limb and say that those numbers are going to go up as they allow more women to serve in the infantry and that. It says here, new vets showing Gulf War illness symptoms. This may be the first time symptoms are linked to current Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. So these veterans of these Iraq, Afghanistan wars may be suffering from the 20-year-old set of symptoms known as Gulf War illness, according to a new report. So it's pretty interesting too, because some people point towards the vaccine, the anthrax vaccine, but we'll see. German soldiers growing, and some think that it's the fallout from when they blew up all these chemical weapons, basically facilities that were given to and facilitated by the U.S. to Saddam Hussein in Iraq. So when they blew them up, there was all this dust flying around. But then you have to remember they were bombing the Iraqi women and children, especially causing birth defects with uranium-tipped bombs. So another way to show what humanitarianism really means to these people. German soldiers growing breast on one side. So talk about irony here. Conditions sparked by too much chest thumping. So this is kind of the same concept that I've talked about football and these hardcore sports actually feminizing men. It says as part of their training, elite German troops do a lot of chest beating, repeatedly whacking their rifles on their left side of their chest. It says it's stimulating unusual hormone production. According to experts, the guys are growing breasts just on one side. Some 74% of the battalion members who approach Army doctors about the condition are diagnosed with this one-sided gynecomas, whatever. They need to change the way they drill. So the common or a constant slamming of rifles against their left-hand side of the chest is clearly a significant factor. Military contracting, our new era of corporate mercenaries. A niche business has become a huge industry, but murky as ever. Privatizing conflict means bypassing democratic oversight, as if there ever was any. Say privatization of conflict is no longer a trend. It's the norm. So they're talking about going to take resources and get regime change, going to further take resources from sovereign countries and peoples. And it says nearly every tool, and there's nothing better than to actually profit from it, right? Even with regular military, they still profit because, the military does for complex. Taxpayers foot the bill and they get screwed by people that build all the infrastructure. But it's gone even further. It says nearly every tool necessary to wage war can now be purchased. Combat support, including the ability to conduct large-scale ops, surgical strikes, operational support like training and intelligence gathering. Don't forget torturing like they did in Iraq, like Titan security and that, and general support like transportation services and paramedical assistance, even to washing their clothes. Remember, it's like $150 for a load of laundry, and makes it worse than when you got it. The demand for these services, in turn, has ballooned. The gross revenue for the private military contractor industry is now in excess of $100 billion a year. That's right. That's like when they send the truck drivers on with empty beds to make shipments or hauls with nothing on them, just so that they can make them. And these guys, their lives are at risk, basically. I'm sure that they know what they're doing, when they get into it to put their lives at risk. But, I guess it would have to be kind of half-half. Well, I might be doing something good here, and I can get paid, whereas some people just, it's all about the money. So, but it says here, Britain to hire foreign top cops as constables. The UK government will unveil new reforms in the very near future under which foreign police chiefs would be able to run British forces for the first time as constables. And they're also talking about they're going to be hiring private police too. They have a private company run the police force in Britain. So that's got to be crazy though, man. Being a Brit, being surrounded by like Muslims and I'm not being racist here, but black guys and women. This is what the equality is all about. I'm not sure if it's a good thing. It seems like it on the surface that, to try to reach this, quote, utopia or something like that. But in the end, I think, like I said before, with like women in combat, I think it just breaks down unity, real unity. But, we're so far gone. All of our countries have just been dismantled and the cultures fragmented that, how are you going to really go back unless there is some kind of real big crisis that happens, whether it's natural, grassroots, organic, or engineered from the top? That's really the only chance to try to right things or bring balance to it. Like women in combat, that female-male balance or the cultural balance. We talk about the inauguration of President Obama. He's launching a progressive agenda. It's an interfaith prayer service. That's right. The other priest got fired because of his comments on gays. He's taking orders, right? He's taking orders from people like this, the Council on Foreign Relations, which they all have ties to, advocating a liberal world order strategy for aligning the world's like-minded and capable democracies. Obama said our journey is not complete until our gay brothers and sisters are treated like anyone else under the law. In immigration, our journey is not complete until we find a better way to welcome illegal immigrants. This is GGN, I'm Darko. Thank you.